No, no, please. You must let me get this communication out. You don't know what I've seen. You can't possibly understand or comprehend. The devil is real. I know. I built his cage.
When it comes to technology, then Doom and id Tech are nearly always at the forefront of what can be delivered on the hardware available. Back then it was certainly the PC era that boomed into the Doom lifestyle, and Doom 3 was no different. id Tech 4 at the hands of John Carmack was one of the greatest leaps forward in visual rendering, and it certainly helped the Nvidia struggling there against ATI, and its 68,000 GPU beat the X800 ATI at the time. And I should know, as I sported both cards across that year of 2004. The version we're looking at today, though, is the improved version of the BFG edition released in 2012. And this is thanks to the guys and girls over at Panic Button. Blinking you'd miss it at the start. You can check out the entire crew that ported this version over from the previous PC, likely console versions here at the beginning of the game, and it's a commendable port overall. As I wanted to give this a full quality, high quality retrospective which will complement my previous id Tech Doom and Wolfenstein look backs, which you can check out in the link below to get geared up ready for that. Here I'm only going to take a fast look at what the game delivers on the S and the Xbox One X in its updated version. It's also available on Pro, PS4 and Switch, and I'm pretty sure that the PS4 will be 1080p 60, and I would be surprised to not see the Pro at 4K 60 or 1800p 60, but we'll have to wait and see. The Switch, yeah, maybe 60. And to wrap it up, I'll be comparing it briefly against the original Xbox version, which did a commendable job of delivering those high-end PC delights on a much smaller and ahead of its time high-quality console machine. Now, Doom 3 was a much better kind of remake than what we expected at the time. Obviously put under lots of strain to get the game out. Hire me or fire me arguments from the team allegedly came about to get this game greenlit internally, and it was worth the wait, pushing visual quality in terms of normal maps, dynamic stencil shadows, dynamic lighting, and really continuing on that trend that John Carmack had started way back with Wolfenstein and certainly the original Doom. But moving into the game itself, the BFG edition did make quite a few additions. It changed large portions of the game itself. The torchlight, you can now use that together with the gun, which was mounted on your shoulder. The whole beginning section is completely changed, because on the BFG edition you play most of it yourself in first person, and on the original release a lot of those sections are cutscenes. The opening section itself is much shorter on the original release, cutting out large sections of going outside onto the surface of Mars. So the improvements really add and complement the atmosphere the game was going for. But visually, it is and still is an impressive looking game. Here on the Xbox One S, we see a fully native 1080p, that's 1920 by 1080 at 60 frames per second. Now, the original release on the Xbox itself ran at 25 or 30 frames per second, and it did run at 640 by 480 in that lower resolution. You could obviously use widescreen and different options in the title itself, but it was an impressive looking title, and as you can see, very performant overall. Now, frustratingly, I did capture quite a few hours of footage on the original Doom about a week or so ago separately to do this video, and I've come away with work as always. I'm sitting in a hotel room recording this, which is why the quality of the voice isn't as good as usual, and I forgot to bring the footage with me. So unfortunately, all I've got left I managed to salvage was the actual frame rate analysis, which is what you're seeing here. So I will be comparing some of that against the original version itself here. Now, moving into the Xbox One X version, we see fully native 4K 3840 by 2160 at 60 frames per second, and that really isn't a huge surprise. This is very, very old game. I know you could argue that it's based on a 2012 game, so technically it's 7 years old now, but really its foundations hark way back to the original Xbox in 2004, so it wasn't a cutting edge game in 2012. So the fact that it's running native 4K, and we've got many of the titles on the Xbox and even the Pro that can do a similar job, that shouldn't come as a huge surprise. Now, what does come as a huge surprise is how well it holds up overall. Some of this is down to the complementary art in the game, because they use a combination of real-time generated in-game itself rendered screens, and obviously that included things like screen inputs and text and fonts. That is natively scaled with a scaler system within the engine itself, so when you upscale the image, you actually get crystal clear fonts and text on many of the screens, which really helps the clarity. The problem with this is, compared to the low quality textures and alpha effects in the title, then you can actually see the huge stark contrast here on the screen and the text above, which looks very low quality and very smeared and stretched across this high canvas that it now has to stretch itself out to, which is a bit of a shame. But you can't expect the team to go back and re-asset and re-author all of their materials here and the textures for the game, because that's not really going to be commendable for an £8 title. But it still looks good and it still holds up well. The lack of any AA in the game gives you a sharp, cut your eye out pixels across all edges, and that makes it one of the easiest games to pixel count I've done in quite some time. So there's no issues here at all. It's fully native and it's pretty much a locked 60. As I say, the original Xbox was pretty much a locked 30 or 25 here in the UK on PAL materials. Now, there was a slight issue here on my X, where you could see it stuttering every now and then, just dropping a frame every few seconds. Now, this happened at certain points in the game, certainly when you're walking through longer corridors, and then at other points it was completely locked and there's no issues at all. So this is arguably a small glitch in the title, or it could be that I'm nearly at full capacity on my hard drive here on the X, so it's using the internal hard drive only. There's no external hard drive on this, and I've only got about 4 gig left on the hard drive itself. I did reboot the machine and test it again, and it did crop up on another section. It is very, very rare and so minor that I would argue you probably wouldn't notice the issues here. Now, in terms of playing the game, those stencil shadows from the torches don't really hold up as well as you would expect. They're obviously very simply done in terms of taking a stencil from the depth buffer of the actual object itself, and that could be the edges, doesn't it? It's all dynamic objects, cast shadows in the title. The lighting that's fixed in place and the dynamic lighting from your torch really adds to that atmosphere. When you look at the stencil shadows, the way they scale and the depth of the screen isn't exactly accurate, and not as good as some other titles we've seen since the titles have moved on. Even around the time of the original Xbox here, when you can look at Chronicles of Riddick, which was one of the most impressive games back in that generation when Xbox was really pushing dynamic lighting, normal maps and stencil shadows again. It uses very similar technology there from Starbreeze, which again is a video I'll be covering very soon as a retrospective, so please look out for that as well. These are titles that really push the quality of visuals on, and the Xbox really was at the forefront of that with its shading system and its GPU, which was far ahead of what was available on the market, including things like the GameCube and certainly the PS2. So visually, the game has really stood the test of time. Yes, it can look very jagged, very square. There's obviously low polygon counts on people's heads. The animation systems and the rigging is very bad. Some of the skinning and the modelling on there, and T-poses that would stand out a mile if you move these characters around more than what you see in some of these real-time cutscenes. But overall, for a game that's this old and still this atmospheric, once you're into the game with that lighting, all the effects, the explosions, the creature design and the gore in the game, it really still hooks you back in, and now you can play it to your heart's content at 4K on your Xbox One console, or even at 1080p on your S, and it still looks good on a 4K screen. Certainly you can see more jagged edges and shimmer on some of those edges due to the lack of AA and the lower quality resolution, but it still scales quite well on a 4K screen, and because of the clean and non-post-processed image overall, it really looks sharp and adds loads of atmosphere to the title, so I really can't under-egg how good the game looks. This was a quick one. You can see the performance analysis. There's not a lot else to say. I just wanted to make sure that people knew that Doom 3 is out, because it came out of nowhere, and I actually only saw it by browsing the store on Sunday night and actually seeing it was on the screen. So even I wasn't aware that this had been stealthily released, but I'm assuming it's gearing up for a Doom Internal, which we can all get excited for and dive in very soon when it gets launched later this year. That's it. I hope you guys and girls enjoyed this quick look at Doom and just how it runs on the X consoles, and I'm sure if you guys have got it on the Pro or the PS4 or anything else, then please let me know in the comments below if it runs just as well as this, or if there's any issues at all. If I do get a chance, I may pick that up and take a look, but I doubt we'll see a huge difference between a title that's this old and runs this well on the Xbox One S. And on that note, I'm going to press the panic button and get the hell out of here. I'll catch you on the next one.